Olá pessoal, bem-vindos a mais um Cast for Closers, o podcast para dominar inside sales e colocar suas metas no bolso. Hoje a gente vai falar com o Richard Harris. Ele é uma influente pessoa no mundo de inside sales nos Estados Unidos e, como ele é americano, a gente vai usar o inglês como língua nesse podcast. Então, a partir de agora, inglês é a língua oficial do Cast for Closers. So, our guest today is Richard Harris, and as the mini bio on his LinkedIn profile say, he is one of the top 25 inside sales leaders, public speaker, sales trainer, startup advisor, and sales hacker. So, he basically done a little bit of everything when it comes to sales. So, Richard, it's a pleasure to have you on our podcast.
Oh, Diego, thank you so much. Very excited. I was eagerly excited when you were, letting me know you were coming from Brazil. And, as I told you, and, I'll tell the audience, I love Brazil. I actually had my honeymoon there with my wife. So it's a beautiful country, and we just found people to be so friendly. So it was very, very exciting to hear from you, and I'm very flattered. So thank you for having me.
That's so cool. You need to come more times to Brazil.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
So can you tell us a little bit about your background and your journey in the inside sales world?
Yeah, so I've done just about all the jobs that you can do in inside sales. I've been a lead generator, I've been a closer, I've done outside sales, I've been sales manager, sales director, VP of sales. In the United States, there's a degree, a college university degree called liberal arts, which means you don't necessarily get a degree in economics or finance or business or marketing. It means you touch on a lot of different subjects. And so I always sort of say that I have a liberal arts degree in sales, just because of all the things I've done from sales ops to leadership.
Yeah, really interesting. And to give the audience some context, I heard a webinar that you made with Gabe Larson from InsideSales.com about prospecting cadence, and it just blew my mind about how many content do you have in this subject, and that made me just reach you and invite you to this podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Perfect. And the subject of this podcast today is going to be social selling and social prospecting. And let's start with this question. When social selling start to become a trend in the inside sales world?
In the inside sales world, I think it's always been around. I think it really kicked off when LinkedIn launched. There was no term for social selling, but I remember when LinkedIn came around in the early to mid 2000s, and how you could connect with people and find out about people, very quickly. And so that, to me, was the beginning of social selling. But I think people also weren't comfortable with it in some ways. They didn't understand how to use it. The iPhone wasn't even invented at that point, right?
Yes.
The touchscreen phone. So it's had to sort of grow up with the physical technology around it as much as it does the social technology.
Perfect. And began with LinkedIn, but nowadays, people use Twitter and Facebook, even WhatsApp in social selling. And so began with LinkedIn, and how this trend just go to every social network that we see nowadays.
Yeah, so it's funny because originally I think it really was social selling. Here you are on this platform like LinkedIn, and you would literally send an email and connect with someone and say, "Hey, I'd love to talk to you about this."
Yes.
And people would accept the meeting. LinkedIn messages like that and in-mails years ago, even up as much as 5 years ago, it was kind of cool to get that request from someone. Like, it really fed the leader's ego and made them want to listen to what that person had to say. Now, as social has really taken off in all of our lives, not just in business, there's so much noise that now if I get an in-mail, sometimes I kind of wish I didn't, and other times I'm like, well, I hope they bring their best game with them, right? Like, they need to bring their A game so that we can, so it's good. So I think that's the big piece that's really sort of shifted in the last few years, is that you can't go quite as direct with social as you used to be able to.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I 100% agree with that sentence. And to complement, in the webinar that I was told in our audience before, you said a phrase that there isn't anything like social selling. What exists is social prospecting. And later we are talking, and you told me Trish Bertuzzi say this phrase first. Why for you there isn't social selling, and what salespeople are doing wrong in this area?
Yeah, I think what it really means is that, again, as we were just talking about how it's changed, is that social prospecting, in my opinion, is using social media to sort of politely poke at someone to try and get a little bit of their attention, right? So if I go onto LinkedIn and I like someone's article, and then I share that article on LinkedIn, and then I go share it to Twitter, or I share it to Facebook, or I like something they've done on Facebook, or I like something they've done on Twitter, or I've retweeted them. That's about 12 things, maybe 8 to 12 things that you can do before you ever ask them for a meeting, right?
Yes.
So in this regards, you can earn the right to ask them for that meeting because you're engaging in their world, right?
Perfect.
If they're a social person. So that's the piece that I see that's really different in the last, maybe the last year or so. And, for some people, I know some people have been doing this for a couple of years, probably the leaders in the industry. But you can actually connect with someone or talk to someone. Maybe connect and talk isn't the right phrase. You can actually touch someone without actually communicating directly. The reason this works, one, is that it shows that you're interested in what they have to do or say. So hopefully that's earning some respect. The other way it helps too is that every time you like something or tweet something or share something, that person typically will get some notification, right? Within their Twitter app, within their inbox that says, oh, so-and-so just tweeted this, or so-and-so liked your post, or so-and-so shared. And again, so that they're now seeing your name long before you ever turn around and try and ask them for anything.
Right.
That's what social prospecting is, right? And it really adds maybe 2 days to the sales cycle, but the goal is to increase your positive response rate.
Perfect. And you are in the mind of the prospect in a nice way, in a nice first way.
I love that line. You're in the mind of the prospect in an appropriate way, nice way.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And other great insight that I heard about social points is that they are made in 3 steps: comment, connect, and call to action. Mm-hmm. And for salespeople, somewhere along the social points, they need to make the prospect make some action. So they need to take the attention outside the social network. So how do you suggest a salespeople to do that?
Yeah, so I would do it. I think it's a little bit about what you did with me, right? And I think you did it. There was nothing inappropriate. You've heard me on this podcast, and then you contacted me saying, "Hey, I listened to your podcast. I'd like to talk to you." And I think that's what you're trying to do.
Yes.
If you like something on Twitter, or retweet something, or like something they did on LinkedIn, or comment on something they did on LinkedIn, which I think is probably the strongest thing. If they've written something on LinkedIn and you can comment on it, I think that's going to they're really going to pay attention to who you were and are. And so you make that part of your conversation. That's the bridge. Your activity is the bridge to the call to action. So you want to reference that activity. Hey, I read this article and retweeted it. I'd love to talk to you about this, right? Perfect. I shared your content because I thought it was really good. I'd love to talk to you about this.
Okay, a lot of context in the message.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Perfect. And here in Brazil, social selling is a really new topic. So how a company in Brazil that isn't doing nothing in social selling right now can start today to implement some of it? Like, what is the first step?
Well, the first thing I think, before you just decide, I'm going to start social selling, is you got to make sure you know who your customers are and see where they're being social, right? Are they being social?
Yeah.
If you're calling a manufacturer of gloves and construction clothing, right, for construction workers, are there people social? Is their CEO social? Are their salespeople social? I don't know. Right? If you're talking to a SaaS company or a technology company, because I know Brazil has a really strong technology space growing.
Yes.
again, you need to do some investigation to see if it's going to be worth your time.
And let's say it works. Let's say our target market is on social. How can I start implementing this in a processual, cadence way?
Mm-hmm. Well, again, I think there are a couple things you want to do. One, you want to identify who's being social, right? Try and figure out what their titles and roles are at that company. And then you want to understand what pains they have as it relates to the solution you offer.
Okay.
If you can draw that connection, right? If you can draw that piece, then you can start understanding how to speak in their world and in their language, which is the ultimate goal.
Perfect.
So I say this a lot, is that it's so much preparation before the execution, right? If you think about a football match in the World Cup, right? The players only play 90 minutes, but how many? Even in the finals, even through the World Cup, how much preparation goes into that, right? As they study their defenders and they study, I've studied the other team's defenders and they study the other goalies' habits and techniques. There's a lot more preparation than there is in execution, and I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about social selling, is that it's like many things, success comes from preparation, right?
I also agree with that, and I just saw many salespeople just comment in a non-contextual way with just so little preparation, and I really think this can change the game for salespeople here in Brazil and all over the world. Perfect. And as a final question, if any of the listeners of our podcast want to go deeper in the subjects that we talk about here, do you recommend some books, podcasts, or influencers for them to follow?
Yeah, so I think that I tell people to go to influencers. One is Jamie Shanks.
Cool. I don't know him. Can you tell?
I would tell you too, and I'd even encourage you to reach out to him for one of these podcasts.
Oh, cool.
But he just wrote his book on social selling. It just came out, I want to say, in the last 30 days.
Oh.
But he's been one of the pioneers of social selling. And then another friend of mine is Jack Kosakowski.
I think I follow him on Twitter.
Yeah. Jack hasn't written a book, but he's super well known in social. And I think those are probably the two. There are plenty of other people out there, and if one of them is listening and I haven't mentioned your name, I apologize. Those are the two that just sort of pop to my mind all the time. So, but those are the two I would do, and I think Jamie's book is worth the read.
Perfect. I'm sure some of our audience are going to buy this book for sure. Here in Meetime, you're going to get a copy of that and read. So thank you for the tips. Richard, any last message that you want to send to the Brazilian audience here and the inside sales freaks that are listening to our podcast right now?
Yeah, no. The only thing I would say is if people want to get a hold of me, they're welcome to. I'm always happy to answer a question when I have time. So feel free to email me at richard@theharrisconsultinggroup.com, theharrisconsultinggroup.com. It's the world's worst and longest email address, so I apologize. But I'm more than happy to chat with people and share knowledge and also learn from you. I'd love to, someday, do something with you, Diego, where there's some interaction, because I'd love to hear what's happening down there a little bit too, so I can understand the audience. The other things I would tell people to do, one is continue to read. Just whether you read a blog post or a book, keep educating yourself. That's the most important piece, whether it's about social selling or inside sales or best practices for metrics and KPIs. Just keep reading. I think that's probably the smartest thing to do. There's a group that I'm a part of called Sales Hacker on LinkedIn, and it's a very active community called the Sales Hacker community, where lots of people go and ask and answer questions. So if you're ever struggling with, I wish I knew the answer to something, it's a great group for people to go and be a part of, because if you ask the question, someone will usually answer it.
Nice. I'm going to join this group, and I also agree with the content and continuous learning. There is just so many free content and great content on the internet that there is no excuse for you not to read and not to be improving yourself every day in the sales world. So completely agree on that. And Richard, so thank you very much for accepting our invitation to talk here in Cast for Closers. And we hopefully are going to see you in Florianopolis some days next year in some of the startups event.
Yeah, I'm going to come next year. I couldn't make it this year. I was invited to go, and I already had a previous commitment. But I'm looking forward to coming back to Brazil soon.
Cool, really cool, man. Have a nice day today.
Thank you, Diego. I really appreciate it too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.